Yeah, I'll look into it. I'll even do the realist report on it. Yeah. I think that we talked about that. But maybe call it like we got the wire on that field. We got to get it control. Yeah, I almost had a panic at that earlier. You know, from some of these things. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely. All right. Thanks. All right, Vince. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna to be as quick with this meeting as I can. I'm leaving on my flight, so I still have to pack. I haven't even started packing. I've just been doing laundry.
So I really, really, really need to get on that. And I'll just say that I really want to have like a solid punctuality. I know that I haven't been the best in the past, but for you guys, especially if like June, if you're listening to this call recording, it'd be amazing if you could show up on time, because that would allow my schedule to be a little bit more, I guess, easier. Because when you have boundaries, when you have schedule, it gives you more freedom, because you don't have to kind of rely on just like sitting around and waiting others. There's not as much inefficiency. And so like, because I'm juggling so many balls right now, I'm juggling a lot of balls, to say the least. Like there's a lot of people I'm trying to, or there are a lot of things that I'm working with, and a lot of people I'm talking to. And I'm not saying that my life is like really that special. I'm just saying that, it is a little bit hectic these days. And if we could be on time, that would be really, really helpful to me. And then also just, it improves the quality of your own life by, maintaining the times that you set is a reflection of like almost like mental and I guess personal hygiene, so to speak. So let's do that. Let's do that in the future. I'm going to dive in right away to a screen share with Vince. This screen share, June, if you're listening, will be for you as well. So this is a new script. So in our past script, I'm trying to remember where I put that past script. I think I put it in the pivotal folder. Let me go over there right now. The script that we used to use, sales resources, scripts. Okay, perfect. Yeah, let's just go to June's first, and let's go to Vince's first. Yeah, so this is like your typical script. Hi, this is Vincent Goggles here with Pizzle. I'm looking blah, 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 right? I'll allow you, I think you guys have this saved as bookmarks still, or you could just look back to our previous conversations to see this document. All this stuff. What was that? Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. So this, I'm not sure which one you use, but this is kind of the general conversation flow. Here's June's. Um, excuse me. Thank you. So yeah, so we created like kind of like a basic version. Now I'm going to introduce you now to a much, much more complex version of those documents right here. So I'm going to move this folder. Actually, I'm going to move this folder over to the pivotal folder. Okay, pivotal. Okay. Weird. I'll have to do that later. Anyways, hi, good morning, afternoon. My name is, this is the script. Hi, good morning, afternoon. My name is Vince, calling on behalf of the Pivotal Real Estate team in Bellevue. Is this John? Question mark. Wait for their answer. If you don't hear an answer from, I'm looking for John. Is this he? And then that's what you would say essentially if they don't answer right away. I'd say, great, John. This is only going to take a minute. My name's Vince, and the reason why I'm calling you is because our client is looking to invest in a property in the area. Based on what I saw online, your property at 123 Main Street meets their criteria. So before I go on, I wanted to check, do you still own it? And then if they say, no, I've never owned it, then you say, or so if they say no, then you say no as in, no as I've never owned it, or no as I've never, it's like, okay, well, that's the wrong person, just like get off the call, right? But you could clarify as in like, no, as you've never owned it, right? Because they may have sold it, or like they say, oh, well, like it's technically my wife's property. I'm just kind of giving you a smoke screen, or giving you like a little bit of a hand face, right? Just saying, I don't feel like talking right now. Which some people can be, silly like that sometimes. But so as you can see in the script, I always put like if no, right? Because that doesn't leave a lot of ambiguity in your mind, and I think that's really helpful, because you're like, Tyler, like this is a great script, but like what do I say if blank blank? What if I say that, what if I say, what do I say if it goes a different direction than I'm used to? The goal of this script that we're doing now is not to be a script. It's supposed to be a little bit of a training wheel for you to essentially move away from needing a script. Okay. And the reason why is because some of our call recordings in general are a little bit too scripted, a little bit too like not conversational enough, right? So we're kind of like missing a lot of information that we could be essentially achieving if we let the conversation loosen up a little bit, be a little bit more flexible, allow people to listen or to talk more, or respond in a way that kind of encourages them to talk more, and yet at the same time leads back to an outcome that we're trying to achieve, or leads back to a productive conversation flow. But have the space in the conversation to be more natural. Like if you listen to Tim's call recordings, which you have access to over Infusionsoft, and I can provide more examples maybe later in another meeting, you can hear that he's very adaptable, right? And he really sounds like he knows what he's doing. Let's put it that way. The goal is to allow you and June to achieve that level, or at least get to a level where you can feel like you have a very natural conversation with someone. And so this document is meant to be a training wheel towards that end. So what I'm doing in each one of this, in kind of what each one of these things is like, saying like, oh, well, if I'm just trying to like outline the entire conversation the way I see it potentially going, and we can change it or add to it as we go. Eventually, like you'll finally get ready to, not need the training wheel anymore and just be able to kind of memorize this part. This is like an introduction that we're going through right now. The rest of what I'm about to describe is kind of much more detailed actually. But also a little bit, like it's up to you to some extent. Before I go on, that was the introduction, and I'm going to finish the introduction. But before I go on and kind of go through that with you guys, which is a little bit more scripted, I'm going to share with you essentially like how this is going to make more sense big picture wise. So we are driving towards call outcomes. Those outcomes could be selling off market, selling on the market, needs improvements with their existing house, wants to build a new home, or looking for another property entirely. Okay, so these are all the things that like we would potentially want to know about the seller's interests, right? We should ask them all these things, because that would help our conversation. That would help Tim's conversation immensely. That would change the way we're having the conversation. For example, if they're interested in selling, off market, on market. If they're considering listing or putting the property on the market, then we want to potentially interview as a real estate agent. If they're interested in selling off market and saving that commission, having more convenience and having more time flexibility, selling off market, and like I mentioned, saving some money, then we'd love to bring a buyer to the table that suits their needs, right? And so there's a script essentially for each one of these potential interests. But if you don't talk about all of them potentially, then we'll never know to ask, right? So it'll be kind of awkward in the sense that you might be like, if you didn't have more experience, say, oh, well, I'm going to start talking about selling off market, asking them what that looks like, et cetera, and I'm just going to forget. I'm going to forget to go back and ask them why they're not interested in selling on market, or if they plan to potentially look for another property, right, afterwards. Like I'll just forget to ask those questions, right? Or you guys will. So that's the reason for a little bit of training wheels, like I mentioned above. Like I'll give you a script so it can kind of, you can kind of have a conversation flow. But eventually, obviously, to have a conversation with someone and remember all these things, it's not going to take that much practice. It'll take a little bit of practice, but it's not going to take years. It's going to take like a couple months for you to develop like confidence and like you'll have enough experience where you'll have experienced everything so much already that you'll kind of know where to go from there, right? So this document is also going to be used for call feedback. Like instead of me just giving you call feedback verbally, which I know can kind of go in one ear and out the other sometimes, just because it's hard to just retain everything that I say through the spoken word, right? Having it down on a piece of paper will provide you the opportunity to say, okay, I heard Tyler give me that feedback. I see Tyler, write it down, whatever. I can practice this in my own head 7 times to create a memory, or whatever. And boom, I got it for next time. And that would probably help a little bit more than me just kind of verbally vomiting to you guys, like just giving you all these ideas, all these suggestions, in like the short amount of time, and then just expect you to retain everything. I mean, that's unrealistic, and I apologize for asking you to do that in the past. So this document will be essentially a better method of communication with this call feedback, with the call feedback that we do. Again, like these are their interests. What if they're not interested? Here's something else to think about. Like, we do want to know if they have other properties for sale. We do want to know if they're considering purchasing another property, which we kind of already get outlined in this. If they're looking for another property, we need to, like let's say they're not looking for another property to potentially live in or invest in after they sell this one, but just be like, out of curiosity, do you or your other family, or do you or someone else in your family is potentially just looking for more real estate just in general, out of curiosity? Because who knows, maybe we come across something, right? And you might as well ask him, because it might be, well, it's actually funny that you mentioned that, because my sister, I'm not interested in selling my property. I'm not interested in buying or moving to another property or investing in another property myself. But my sister is actually thinking about yada, yada, yada. And so if you might as well ask that again as just a point of clarification, because sometimes like people always think it's related to the property that you're talking about, but it's good to ask just in general if they know any friends or family, considering purchasing a property, because maybe we can help them. And then like neighbors, right? It's like, okay, let's say we can't work with this person whatsoever. Let's say that like everything we're throwing at them, right, is just kind of hitting the wall and slipping down to the ground, right? Nothing's sticking. So let's say that like they're not interested in anything. They don't really want to talk with you. But you might as well ask like, oh, well, out of curiosity, do you have any neighbors? And they're like, you know what? That's funny you mentioned it, because I was not interested in talking with you before. This is maybe what they're thinking, but I'll just verbalize it. I was not interested in talking with you before, but since you're asking, one of my neighbors has been getting on my nerves, and they told me that they're potentially selling and they haven't kept up the house at all. You should probably go get that, go talk to my neighbor, because I want that property fixed up. I want them out of there. Or they might just be like, oh, my friendly neighbor, now that you mentioned it, my friendly neighbor did tell me like 3 months ago they would be considering selling. I haven't talked to him since, and I haven't really thought about it, but you might want to try them, right? It's like, if you don't ask, they'll never say, right? It's hard to have everything. The seller just like isn't going to just like have everything in their head to be able to provide you like that information unless you ask them, right? So asking redundancy is something we want to avoid, but for clarification, it's something we want to encourage. Does that distinction make sense? So let me give you an example. Like, let's say that you ask the same question twice. Let's say are you considering interested, or are you considering or thinking to sell by chance? And they might be like, oh yes, I'm thinking about selling, but then they kind of like answer it in kind of an unsure way. And so you're like, oh, so what kind of sale are you thinking about? Or like you could just be like, it's like, oh, that's super redundant. Why are you asking that question? I'm just giving a really dumb example. This isn't the best example, but why am I essentially just being so redundant? The reason why I'm being redundant is for clarification or understanding, deeper a little bit, right? So we can do that. But one thing we want to avoid is like, let's say we go through a script and they say, hey, I'm not really interested in selling right now, and be like, oh, well, if you were to sell, what price would you want to? What price would make you want to move? And then they say, I haven't thought about it. I haven't thought about selling. It's like, okay, well, would it be helpful at least for you to get an idea of, I guess, what's possible, And then they're like, actually, like that would actually be a good version of like asking for like more clarification of like their interest level or like where their mind's at. That would be a good example. But you're kind of being redundant. You're kind of asking about the same thing just in another way, or like going a little deeper, or like giving a caveat, or like, let's say if you were to, sell, do you have a price in mind that would actually make it worth your time or worth the effort for you to kind of consider it, or worth it for you to consider? And it's like, okay, no, but like, okay, well, would it be helpful to you at least get an idea of kind of what's possible? Because maybe I can just provide that to you. It's not that hard for me to do so, if you're curious. And they might be like, oh yeah, actually I am curious, but I don't want to do it if you spend a lot of time putting together for me. It's like, don't worry, it won't take me much time at all. Why don't I send that to you? If you have any questions about it, please let me know. In the future, kind of like a CMA or something, like market assessment, past sales nearby that you can take a look at, just kind of zero in on where your property fits in. And then be like, okay, great. Like, let's say that, And then you might be like, by the way, I'm just, okay, I'm going to ramble a little bit. Allow me to, if that's okay. But like, oh, by the way, are you working on the house at all? Do you need any help with improvements? Maybe I can give you a contractor referral while I'm on the phone with you. Do you need a plumber or an electrician or anything like that would be, useful to you, like, good price or, will actually show up for that matter. And the guy's going to be like, actually, you know what? I might need a plumber. You might be able to, you could say, hey, this guy needs a plumber, kick it over as a lead because we're building relationships here. What if they want to build a new home? Oh, great. Well, maybe you could either hire us or one of our colleagues to build the home for you if you're considering building a new home, or buying another property and building your dream home, for that matter. But you could also, just ask them like, hey, I understand that you're not interested in selling this property, and sounds like you might want to get off the phone pretty soon here. But just out of curiosity, do you or anybody else in your family, are you looking for another property? And the reason why I'm asking is because we tend to drum up a lot of leads off market, and so we'll keep our eyes out if you have anything that you're particularly looking for. Because sometimes, and this is me to you, that sometimes people they don't want to sell their property because they think they can't get what they want, if that makes sense. And they may be right. They might want $1 million property and their house is only worth 500 grand and they lost their job. So it's like, okay, well, that guy can't get an increased amount of, or can't get a bigger loan, and he doesn't have enough money to afford that bigger house. So it's like, okay, it looks like we're in a standstill here. But sometimes people are like, oh, well, I just haven't been able to find it. It's like, oh, well, like, we find properties all the time. In fact, we're very good at it. In fact, we do it better than the average real estate broker. And we can represent you because we're calling people off market, just like we're calling you. So maybe it's a match made in heaven. Anyways, so that's kind of an example. I would like to end the call at 3:15, so I'll just be quick with this. Feel free to read through this initial call script on your own time. As you can see here, there's little bookmarks. This bookmark will take you to another page in the document where it'll provide you like more information if that happens. And the reason why is obviously we don't like a bunch of repeat things. So we created these bookmarks for referencing other parts of this document that we can use to say, oh, well, if they say that, then you just go here, right? And it also simplifies in your own mind, like what if you just say, oh, I'll just use the scripts, right? Or, oh, I'll just use, and this is like, again, just training wheels, right? Now, how do you develop competency and fluency within a conversation? You practice. But within that practice, you need time for like trying things out and failing and getting better and reflecting on that. But you also need time for like that feedback, to you, somebody else on the outside, just saying, hey, you probably should have said it, this way. This document is going to be the primary record keeping of that feedback. So if you do have an issue with the conversations you have, take it upon your own initiative to reflect back on this document. Take a look to see if you encountered an issue, if it's already kind of like the right way of saying it or the right way of responding has already been addressed in this document. And if it hasn't been addressed, message me, and I'll put together kind of a conversation flow in this document to address it. So that will give us like one central hub of that feedback. It'll make our communication really easy. And then also, like, as we create these little sections in the document, like discovery questions, if you're interested in selling, what is that? Like, if they say that, like, what does that script look like? If they're interested in, if you want to get off the call with them, like, no matter what they say, this is the script. If they're interested in potentially putting the property on the market and they might consider us, this is a listing script. Like if we want to talk to them about potentially us listing that property. If they've recently remodeled the house or built a new house on the property, here's the script. If they've done significant improvements. Here's just like we're going to create more and more and more of these, oh, I just need to go here. And I've already said it so many times that I've memorized it pretty much, right? And then once you memorize it, you can create your own and then, test things out and provide feedback to me and say, hey, Tyler, if I said this, I tried this to say this, it actually worked out a lot better. I would suggest we change it. We're going to be able to get to that eventually. But first, you kind of may need that handhold of like just being able to kind of rehearse or just, keep that category in your mind's moved to that category of the conversation based on what somebody tells you, and then essentially just repeat what the quote unquote script is within that category. And the way you're going to learn that is just by having the opportunity to try it out yourself. Go back to this document, swing the bat, reflect on this document. We can do some role play, and then hopefully you'll have it memorized for the next time. I would encourage you not to rely on this document during your calls, because it'll confuse you. You'll have to skip around too much. It'll just kind of get in the way of your learning process, in my opinion. And so therefore, I'd suggest this is just like a kind of a reflection tool, and for role play, and something to essentially just have, like I was mentioning, just like a knowledge hub or an information resource, as opposed to an actual script that you would use during your call. While you're on your call, keep it as natural as possible, and therefore don't rely on like a document to read upon. Yeah, that's kind of overall what I'd like to go through, and feel free to take a look through this document in your own time. I will give you some reference. This is like the initial call script. This is like your script right here. Initial call is like when you reach out to them. The follow-up call, hold on. Follow-up call, that's going to be Tim's call. And then the offer call is like once we get to the point where they're ready for an offer or whatever other service or resource we could provide. That's like a third call. But Tim's is going to be right here. That's going to be that transition point. And the information you obtain in these like call outcomes, like we're going to create a little bit better of a form to obtain this information. That's going to allow Tim to kind of carry on the conversation without having to listen to every single call recording that you guys do, because that can get extremely time consuming, the number of leads that we're working with, right? And the number of follow-ups that Tim is doing. He doesn't have time to listen to every single call recording before his calls. So this information that we're gathering, based on a little bit more strategic approach that we're doing, like this, all this information, depending on kind of where the conversation goes, we'll have the ability to kind of record that within the Infusionsoft system eventually. And then Tim will just be able to take that conversation and go with it, right? Run with it. And then, ask some clarifying questions, obtain some additional information, and kind of go from there. Again, without needing to kind of handhold it or like listen to a bunch of call recordings, ask you a bunch of questions about how the call went, et cetera, et cetera. There's no loss of information, right? There's no signal loss from that initial call to Tim's follow-up call, which has been a little bit of a challenge in the past because Tim has been repeating a lot of things that you've already asked, just because there hasn't been sufficient notes about the lead, and Tim doesn't have time because like these follow-ups are an immense task. Like Tim has like 140 follow-ups to do on a given week. So it's like that adds up a lot. And especially if conversations take a while, that adds up to just be a ton of time. And there's no way to be able to listen to every single call recording, especially when some people don't answer and you have to like remind yourself, like, on 3 different attempts, you try to call them. On the 3rd attempt, they finally pick up. Yeah, I can just imagine. So yeah, I'm just kind of really trying to explain the problem that Tim has, and so thus another kind of reason for this change that we're doing. So yeah, again, feel free to review what's here. I need to work on the formatting a bit, so the formatting is a little bit all over the place. But hopefully this makes sense to you. In next week's meeting, we'll do a little bit more role play. We'll add to some conversation. We'll do a little bit of call. You'll listen to Tim's call recordings maybe a little bit. And we'll just go through this a little bit more. In the meantime, I was hoping both you and June could like read through this, provide your thoughts, provide some suggestions, spend a little bit of time with it. The only way we're going to be able to implement this is if you both spend like a little bit of time on your own time, or a little bit of time at least before you make calls, just to review it and think about it, right? Maybe on a daily basis. And therefore we can kind of make this document a little bit more real for each other, right? It's a little bit more useful. It's only useful if you use it. The only way you use it is repeated referencing. And so, yeah, definitely do that this week. That way we can kind of like, again, progress. And then, begin our move away from a script, if that makes sense. Yeah, and yeah, the better Tim can do, the more money all of us make, right? There's obviously incentive. Yeah, and also like there's a lot of leads that kind of slip through the cracks just because the conversation is redundant. They kind of get frustrated. Rapport is lost. There's a lot of leads that get slip through the cracks because there's too much time in between the time you call him and Tim follows up, just because he's got so many to do. Sometimes they just build up on a given week or a given part of the week. Like on Thursdays and Fridays, we get a bunch of leads, for example, and then Tim has to go through all those calls. Sometimes he can't get to it on Monday, and by Monday, the lead is already, kind of tired out from the conversation or changed their mind or whatever. It's like, man, we should have definitely called him immediately after, but Tim essentially just couldn't do it. So yeah, this is going to improve that a ton, and it also allows us to make sure we ask everything that we want to ask, or at least be able to kind of remind ourselves to ask everything we want to ask. Like, for example, if they're interested in selling off market, just as an example of something that's important to ask, we need to know why they're not interested in selling on the market. Like if they're interested in selling off the market, we need to know the specific reasons. Not the reasons we tell them, but the reasons they have in their own heart why they're not interested in selling on the market. And the reason why is because time and time again, somebody changes their mind later on. And we never had the conversation, but like we were kind of caught off guard. And it's like, man, I wish we should have addressed that initially, so we didn't spend all this time, all this conversation just for that script to be flipped. And now we're taking a completely different approach. Like sometimes that happens inevitably, but you can do a lot on the front end to reduce that significantly, right? By just knowing how to have a conversation, bring up all the potential options in their own time in the conversation, of course, like not just up for just being too obnoxious with it, but like exploring sufficiently so that you really understand someone, and that way you can you can serve them more efficiently, right? You can serve them easier. And that's what we're trying to do, right? The sales is a very relationship oriented endeavor, at least the type of sales that we're doing. Sales is like also a very like win-win type of business that you know what I mean? Like that's kind of what we're doing, at least here, is we're only providing a solution if it makes sense for someone more than their other available opportunities, right? And so oftentimes selling off the market will do that for sure for someone. Oftentimes having a conversation about potentially listing the property, providing them the data, it's something that somebody else has an offer to them. And even if they have offer, then we're doing it in a more like personal way. We're doing it in a more efficient way. We're doing it in a more knowledgeable way, because we do have a lot of knowledge in this industry, and way more so than the average real estate agent, just because it's kind of, I don't want to give them our reasons, but that's just typically what I see. So anyways, it works out in all ways, right? If they're interested in hiring a builder, if they're interested in hiring, a subcontractor to do some renovation, if they're interested in another property, it's like there's so many different opportunities for us to kind of work with people. The key is just, being consistent enough to ask, right? Consistency. Yeah. And so that's what hopefully this will run. I've gone on my rant long enough. Do you have any questions about this? Or okay, awesome. Yeah, yeah. You know what? I might just call it that. I like that phrase. Backbone, not script. Just for clarity. Hmm. Hmm. Right, right. Yeah, that's the goal, is to make it more efficient. It's hard to make things efficient, right? Uh, but yeah, that's time and energy, right? That's all it takes. And the more we use it, the more we'll benefit from it. So if you want to, if you have any ideas as you're reading through it, feel free to copy this and comment on it, and just say, "Hey, Tyler, I have an idea," or you don't even need to say that. You just say, what if we said, you know, I, I don't know what you would say, but you can just put a comment there if you have any suggestions as you're going through, based on your own experience, based on just in general, for no other reason than just kind of providing a suggestion, and then I'll review it and we can talk about it. So as you're going through, feel free to contribute in that way, and and also just for clarity again, I'll say call outcomes. This is essentially the information that we're looking to obtain. This information that I have up top is essentially like my suggestion of how to obtain the information that we're looking to obtain. So this, I still need to add on a little bit more, like the call outcomes. Like, I'm pretty good with it though, or I've got it pretty far with it. But yeah, we'll be expanding this for sure. But this up top information is just an extrapolation or like a continuation of those call outcomes, in the sense that, like, I would suggest that you essentially obtain that information a certain way in the most efficient path possible. But again, if you want to try things out, that's a little bit different than what's here. This is for your own benefit, so feel free to try other things out, right? And then we can incorporate the things that you try if they work. So yeah, cool. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Hopefully you have the screen recording saved for June. I guess last thoughts at all? Okay, solid. Last thoughts at all before we end? Yeah. Huh. I mean, that would be the goal. That would be the goal. I mean, it's a pretty lofty goal, given Tim is really good at what he does. But that being said, what we're doing isn't that complicated, as long as you kind of write it out. Have it all in your head. I mean, it's not that complicated, right? Yep. Yeah. I love it, man. Cool. Well, yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. You are an eccentric. You are an eccentric, and that's what it takes, right? I love it. Very cool. Well, we'll keep working on it, and I've said everything I think I want to say. So I'm going to get packing, man. Thank you for jumping on this phone call, and hope. Thank you. I will, and I'll enjoy it. Yeah. Thank you, man. See ya.